Before the news cameras arrived, before the press briefings, before the detective took it personally, there was just a father, screaming into silence. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't polite, he didn't follow the chain of command, but he remembered the last time Lily kissed his cheek. The way Jack reached for his hand, and when they disappeared, he knew something was wrong. While the headlines focused on official statements, while the RCMP filtered what the public could see, he was digging, demanding, yelling into rooms that shut their doors. And when they wouldn't listen, he made them. This isn't a story about grief. It's a story about war. One man against the machine, against whispers, against a truth no one wanted found. And the worst part, he was right. From the very beginning. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 2,000 subscribers, all because of your support. And we need that same energy to reach 3,000, then 5,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your DNA on that subscribe button, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. There's no manual for what he became after the disappearance. No guide for the kind of man a father turns into when his children vanish and the system treats him like a footnote. Just instinct, just rage, just a voice, screaming in rooms that refuse to listen. You didn't see him in the headlines. He wasn't on the podium. There was no official quote beneath his name. In the first wave of press conferences, he stood in the back, uninvited, unmentioned. He watched a narrative unfold, one that barely acknowledged he existed. The stepfather was center stage. The mother stayed quiet. The RCMP controlled the language. We're actively investigating. No cause for panic. We're following leads. But he knew something was off. He remembered the way Jack cried when he had to go back to that house. He remembered the time Lily told him, in her tiny voice, "I don't like it when Daniel is mad." He remembered the bruises, the missed phone calls, the day Child Protective Services told him, "We found no evidence of harm." And when his kids went missing, the silence from the people who were supposed to protect them, that silence became unbearable. He called. He showed up. He begged. Not for attention, not for media, but for anyone to listen. Instead, they labeled him CODY Sullivan. Emotional, disruptive, unhelpful to the investigation. They used his anger as proof that he didn't belong at the table. But the truth is, he was the only one who had been paying attention. This isn't the story of a man consumed by grief. It's the story of a man set on fire by it, who took the very system that shut him out and cracked it open with his bare hands. He remembers the moment the call came in, not from police, not from a family member, not even from the mother. It was a neighbor, breathless, unsure. They're saying Lily and Jack are missing. Missing. The word didn't register at first. Not until he dropped the phone. Not until his chest stopped rising, and the room felt like it was tilting. He tried calling her, their mother. No answer. Tried the RCMP tip line. Got a recording. By the time he reached the house, it was already roped off. Officers, yellow tape, and Daniel Martel, outside, giving a statement. Daniel, the man the children never called. The man Jack once described as too loud when he drinks. But Daniel's voice was the one on the cameras. His quotes made the press release. His timeline was accepted without question. Meanwhile, the father, the real father, CODY Sullivan, stood behind a barricade, watching strangers speculate about the last moments of his children, watching investigators take notes, but never take his name. Not once did they ask, "When did you last see them?" Did they mention anything? Was something wrong? Because he had answers. He knew the last time he saw them, just 4 days before they vanished. Jack had a scrape on his arm. Lily was quieter than usual, and when he'd asked what was wrong, she just said, "I want to stay longer." But Mommy said no. That was the last moment he heard her voice. The last time Jack gave him a sloppy, lopsided hug. The last time his world was whole. And while officials scrambled for press coverage, while Daniel played the grieving stepfather on camera, the father was screaming from the sidelines, not for attention, but for truth. But truth doesn't fit neatly into the story they were building. Truth is messy. It implicates people. It demands confrontation. And so, like everything else that made people uncomfortable, his voice was edited out, not once mentioned in the RCMP's official timeline. No updates given directly to him. And when he asked questions, they told him, "We'll get back to you." They never did. That day, the day the world was told Lily and Jack had disappeared, he didn't just lose his children, he lost his place in their story. The calls started the next morning, first to CPS, then to the RCMP, then back to CPS again. "I need to know who last saw them. Did they file a safety check? Were there any previous reports? Voicemail, transferred lines, a promise to circle back." But no one did. When he showed up at the Child Services office, they told him, "We're not at liberty to share details at this time." When he went to the RCMP post, they said, "The case is under control, sir. Please don't interfere." Interfere. That's what they called it. A father asking why his kids are gone. A father trying to understand how bruises were dismissed. A father who raised concerns months ago, with names, dates, and photos. But now, he was a problem. They called him unstable, emotional, too involved. In closed-door meetings, they brought up his past. A custody dispute 5 years ago. A bar fight he never denied. Words like volatile and difficult suddenly appeared in their internal summaries. And just like that, the narrative shifted. He's trying to insert himself. He's not the custodial parent. Let's focus on what we can prove. They never asked what he knew. Never reviewed the concerns he filed last year. Never followed up on the photos of bruises he emailed a social worker in April. Instead, they closed the door. They let Daniel Martel speak on the evening news. They let the mother sit behind legal counsel, silent and protected. And they left him, Lily and Jack's biological father, on the outside looking in. But what they didn't realize was this. They weren't locking him out. They were locking themselves in a room filled with silence, with files that contradicted each other, with timelines that didn't match. And while they rehearsed press statements, while they doubled down on containment and control, he started collecting names, dates, locations, a different kind of case file, one written in the voice of a father, one that would not be ignored forever. There's a name for men like him, not father, not advocate, not even concerned parent. They called him a problem, a disruption, a threat to the process, because he started showing up. First at the town hall, quietly at first, just asking who was in charge of the missing persons response, asking for public timelines, access to traffic cams, clarification on the last time anyone outside the house had seen Lily or Jack. They told him, this isn't the place. So he found another. The school. He stood outside the gates, waited for the bell, then asked to speak to the principal. Not as a protester, not as a media stunt, but as a father whose children had been in that building just weeks before they vanished. The principal said she couldn't discuss student matters, that it was under review, that she was cooperating with law enforcement. He asked, did anyone file a concern about Jack's bruises? Was Lily's withdrawn behavior ever documented? The only answer, a locked door. Then came the visit to the CPS building, the same one he'd called dozens of times. This time he waited in the lobby until someone came down. The caseworker assigned to the family, A name he recognized from the paperwork he never should have had to fight for, wasn't available. But another staffer came out, nervous, looking over her shoulder, telling him, "Sir, we can't share that information with you. You're not the custodial parent." He clenched his fists, not to strike, but to keep himself grounded. Because the rage wasn't abstract. It wasn't vague. It was names, faces, dates, moments that could have saved his kids, and didn't. His voice shook, not from fury, but from being ignored for too long. But to them, that shaking meant danger. His persistence meant volatility. His presence meant aggression. A police officer was called to escort him out, not because he made threats, not because he broke any laws, because he refused to stop asking. In a system that preferred silence, he was volume. In an investigation that leaned on closure, he was insistence. They started referring to him in internal emails. "Father is causing disruptions. He's making staff uncomfortable. Recommend limiting contact." But what they missed, what they all missed, was this. He wasn't unstable. He was breaking. Breaking from weeks of being erased. Breaking from the knowledge that while he was pounding on locked doors, someone else might have been covering up the truth. And yet still, he didn't stop. Because it wasn't about appearances. It was about two children. His children. And someone knew where they went. The system wanted him quiet. But silence wasn't in his blood. Somewhere in the noise, between grief and rage, came clarity. A memory. A photo. Not just any photo, but one taken 4 months before the children vanished. Jack sitting on a swing. Smiling, but only just. Zoom in, and there it was. A faint shadow on the upper arm. Not enough to scream abuse, but enough to whisper, "Look again." He had asked about it then. The response was familiar. Kids fall. Boys roughhouse. You're overthinking it. But now, in light of everything, that photo felt radioactive. And it wasn't alone. He opened a folder on his phone labeled Lily. Inside, hundreds of messages. Photos of her drawings. Snippets of poems. And then a text. Sent at 9:42 p.m. Exactly 10 days before the disappearance. It read, "I heard mommy crying again." He was yelling. Jack hid in the closet. "Can we come to your place soon?" He had replied instantly. "Anytime. Always." But the next morning the thread ended. No follow-up. No reply. When he brought this to RCMP, they said it didn't change the timeline. When he forwarded it to Child Services, he got no response. So, he made a decision. He posted it, publicly. The photo of Jack's bruise. The screenshot of Lily's message, with their names redacted, but the timestamp left intact. The caption, "If this doesn't matter, what does?" Within an hour, it spread. Not viral. Not yet. But enough. Enough for a former teacher to message him privately. I remember her being quiet after weekends at home. Enough for an old neighbor to comment, "I always thought the screaming next door wasn't normal." Enough for strangers to say, "Why wasn't this part of the investigation?" And just like that, the frame began to crack. Because now it wasn't just a father yelling in empty rooms. It was others remembering, reaching out, filling in the gaps. The official narrative refused to close. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And sometimes, all you need is one missed clue. One undeniable thing that no one can unsee. He gave them that. And now they were watching. The system didn't break. It didn't malfunction. It operated exactly as it always had, calculated, clean and cold. But systems forget one thing. People talk. And once he posted the bruise, once Lily's text made its way into the hands of the public, something shifted. The views came slow at first. 300 shares. 1,100 comments. Then an early childhood educator reposted it. I saw that child flinch once, when Daniel entered the room. I told myself it was nothing. I don't think it was nothing anymore. The dam didn't burst. It cracked. And then came the drips. A message from someone who lived on the same street. He always slammed the door too hard when he left. It made my kids jump. A former church member. Lily stopped showing up to Sunday school 2 months before they vanished. I asked why. Her mom didn't answer. A mother from the school pickup line. I saw Lily's lip split once. I wish I had asked. Not everything came in support. Some were colder. You're going to make this worse for their mother. Let it go. The police know more than you. You're unstable. We remember what happened with your custody case. He read every word. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Because this wasn't about clearing his name anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about them. Jack. Lily. 2 children whose voices had been buried beneath bureaucracy, reputation, silence. He posted again, this time with a caption that simply read, I don't want apologies. I want the truth. Even if it hurts. That post hit 500,000 views in 2 days. It made the news. Not the evening segment. Not yet. But a local podcast picked it up. And then a reporter who had once been warned to stay away, reached out off the record. I think something was buried. And I think you're the only one still digging. Suddenly he wasn't alone. Not entirely. A few voices were echoing now. Quiet. Yes. Careful always. But echoing. And that's all it takes sometimes. Not a riot. Not a fire. Just enough people whispering the same thing at the same time. We saw it too. It started small. A comment under the photo of Lily's drawing. Then another. Under the post about the bruises on Jack's shoulder. I always wondered about that scream I heard once. There was a night Daniel's truck was parked outside their house. Till 2 a.m. It didn't feel right. He didn't expect the messages. Not really. Because for months he was a man screaming into a void. But now the void was whispering back. A woman from the next street over DMs him privately. She's afraid to speak on record. She says she remembers a night when she heard what sounded like Jack crying. Loud. Persistent. I should have checked. I told myself it was just a tantrum. A former teacher emails him from an anonymous account. I was told not to report the marks. It wasn't my business. I'm sorry. And still others. They warn him. You're dragging up things better left buried. Daniel's family has connections. Be careful. They're going to paint you as unhinged. Again. But he doesn't flinch. Because when you lose your children, you lose your fear. Every time someone warns him to stop, he posts something louder. The voicemail Lily left him 3 weeks before she disappeared. Quiet. Short. But something's off in her voice. A family photo he took a year ago. Lily's body ever so slightly leaning away from Daniel. A school report showing Jack's attendance dropping dramatically after Daniel moved in. He doesn't explain these posts. He just leaves them. No hashtags. No filters. No quotes. The people start doing the explaining for him. Comment after comment. Testimony after testimony. Strangers connecting the dots. The RCMP said didn't exist. One neighbor even admits to searching the wooded path behind the house herself, days before the police ever cordoned it off. She says she found a glitter sticker. Didn't know it meant anything. Until now. His inbox fills. Some brave. Some broken. All late. And yet, not too late. Because the silence that once protected Daniel is now cracking. And the man once dismissed as angry, unstable, impossible, is suddenly sounding like the only one who's been telling the truth. In this town, they used to say, it's better to mind your business. But now, they're beginning to realize, this was always their business. As the story gained traction, So did the resistance. The more the father posted, the more the town recoiled. Whispers turned to complaints, then to letters, then to signatures. Someone filed for a restraining order, claimed he was harassing school staff, showing up unannounced, creating a hostile environment. He never laid a finger on anyone, never threatened, never crossed a legal line. But when grief refuses to sit quietly, it's labeled disruptive, aggressive, dangerous. His name stopped opening doors. It started closing them. Parents he'd once shared carpool routes with crossed the street to avoid him. Church members he once prayed beside now looked through him. The whispers weren't new, but the silence hurt more. They said he was obsessed, that he was stuck in denial, that he was trying to shift blame for what was clearly a tragedy. But it wasn't just grief driving him. It was memory. The sound of Lily's laugh in the back seat. The way Jack would always tug his shirt when nervous. He remembered. The system had forgotten. So while the court dates and filings piled up, he kept digging. Late nights became all-nighters. Walls once covered in family photos, now filled with timelines, printouts, GPS screenshots, highlighted inconsistencies, circled statements, red string pulling it all together. He was no detective, but he was close, and getting closer. Then one night, after months of shouting into silence, he got a call. It was brief. The voice on the other end didn't give a name, just one sentence. "I've been following your posts." A pause. Then, "You're not wrong." That call changed everything, because it didn't come from a neighbor, or a friend, or a stranger offering condolences. It came from someone inside, someone who still wore the badge, someone willing to listen, someone who had seen the same cracks, and had been told to look away. And suddenly the father wasn't just angry. He wasn't just grieving. He was mobilizing. One man, one story, and now one ally inside the very machine that had shut him out. They had tried to silence him, turn the town against him, strip him of credibility. But instead, they just sharpened his purpose. By month 3, he wasn't just fighting for answers. He was fighting for his name. First came the whispers, then the warnings, and then the paperwork. Someone filed a restraining order against him. No physical threat, no crime, just his presence, labeled intimidating. His visits to the school were unwelcome. His questions to the principal were hostile. His attempt to speak to the caseworker, borderline harassment. All he'd done was show up, ask, demand, plead. But when you scream into a broken system, the system calls you dangerous. His name was no longer that of a grieving father. It was a problem. Church invites stopped. Friends fell silent. Neighbors who once waved now closed blinds. At the grocery store, people turned the other way. At town hall, they rolled their eyes. He's unstable. He's making it worse. He's hurting the investigation. But what investigation? The one that stopped at Daniel Martel's timeline. The one that never asked about Jack's bruises. The one that never pulled GPS logs from the family's devices. They called him disruptive. But what they really meant was, he won't go away. And he wouldn't. Because behind the online rants, the town hall confrontations, the raw grief, was something more dangerous than outrage. Evidence. He started connecting dots. Notes in a spiral-bound book. Hand-drawn maps. Receipts. Voice memos. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was building a case. And someone noticed. It didn't happen in a dramatic moment. No press conference. No announcement. Just a message. Tucked into a brown envelope. Slipped under the windshield of his car one night. No name. No sender. Just a few printed emails. Internal exchanges between RCMP officers. Marked confidential. The subject line. Martel inquiry. Shelve until further notice. That was the crack. The fracture in the wall he'd been beating against for months. And through it, a hand reached back. Someone in law enforcement had been watching him. Someone who saw what he saw. Someone who, despite orders, refused to forget Jack and Lily. That night, the father didn't cry. He didn't post. He didn't shout. He just circled one name on the email chain and made a note beside it. Ask him to meet. Because now, he wasn't alone. He wasn't the right kind of father. That's what they said. Too loud. Too angry. Too unstable. He didn't know the language of press conferences. He didn't wear grief like a pressed suit. He didn't cry politely for the cameras. He roared. He pushed. He broke the silence that kept too many comfortable. And for that, they tried to erase him. But they couldn't. Because he was right. Every red flag. Every ignored bruise. Every quiet, bureaucratic decision that sealed Jack and Lily's fate. He had seen it. Felt it. Screamed about it when no one else would. But truth in a town like this. It's not welcomed. It's endured. And he endured it all. The restraining orders. The social exile. The whispers. The blame. His job suffered. His relationships fractured. His health declined. And still he showed up. Not because he trusted the system, but because he couldn't sleep until the silence was broken. And finally, it broke. One detective. One inbox of buried reports. One community that started whispering in his direction instead of away from it. He didn't win. This wasn't a victory. His children were still gone. And with them, parts of him that will never come back. But for the first time, someone listened, and someone followed. Not because of procedure, not because of protocol, but because of a father who refused to disappear. In the end, there was no justice in sight, just wreckage. A man on the edge of ruin, burned by the very system that should have protected his children. And the chilling truth that still hangs in the air. Why did a man have to lose everything before anyone believed him? Silence didn't fail him. Silence protected everyone else. But truth demanded a cost. And he paid it. The father fought with nothing but memory and instinct. But now, someone else is listening. And he's not just listening, he's digging. The investigation isn't over. The truth didn't end here. Stay with us. Because the detective isn't done. And the story of Lily and Jack Sullivan is far from over. More updates. Only from Detective Max. One voice, still refusing to let this case disappear.